guess what most people are going to be wondering is a flight with asylum seekers going to take off to Rwanda before the next election?
Yes, we must do. That's what the public want. That's what we've set out to achieve. We're obviously disappointed by the judgment. We don't agree with it, and we certainly don't agree with some of the evidence that was brought forward by the UNHCR and others, but we respect the judgment, and we haven't sat idly on our hands in recent months. I prepared a comprehensive Plan B with the former Home Secretary, and I've been negotiating a treaty with the government of Rwanda, which is very close to being agreed, and the Prime Minister has announced today that we will be doing that as soon as possible, and then that will be coupled with, exceptionally, a piece of primary legislation where Parliament will determine that Rwanda is a safe country, and we'll put in place other safeguards so that this can now finally go ahead.
That's what I want to ask about.
We can end this cycle of constant legal challenges and delay, which the public are rightly sick of.
So let me get my head around this, right? The Supreme Court, the highest court in the UK, has ruled that Rwanda is not a safe country. So we're just going to have a vote in Parliament and rule that Rwanda is a safe country. I mean, is that actually how that works?
No, I understand your question, but that's not what's going to happen. Firstly, the Supreme Court primarily focused on one issue, which was whether there was a risk that an illegal migrant who had come to the UK and was sent to Rwanda could then be refooled, as the terminology goes, sent back to their country of origin against their will, if that was an unsafe country. One of the things that this treaty will do is directly and comprehensively answer that question. So the treaty will make a number of substantial changes which will change the rules of the game.
You can guarantee that any asylum seeker who goes to Rwanda will not be sent back to their country of origin. Because I have to say, Rwanda's record on this is pretty mixed. You can admit that.
No, I don't agree with that, actually, because...
Well, last year they rejected 100% of asylum seekers from Afghanistan, for example.
We have an entirely different arrangement. We've agreed a bespoke arrangement. I think some of the evidence that was presented in the Supreme Court, particularly by the UNHCR, was highly disingenuous. Remember that the UNHCR have their own scheme where they take refugees to Rwanda, and none of their published policies and documents raised any of the questions they did in the court. But to answer your principal question, which is an important one, Parliament will be asked to judge, is Rwanda a safe country, in passing the legislation and indeed the treaty, but they'll be asked to do that on the basis of the assurances that are in the treaty, which will be very comprehensive and directly answer the questions raised by the Supreme Court.
That applies to UK courts, right? Not international ones. So is it right then that an asylum seeker could just go to Strasbourg and challenge it through the ECHR?
Well, accompanying the treaty will be this piece of legislation. I'm not going to speculate on its contents. That wouldn't be right because we're in the final stages of drafting it. But we have given it a great deal of thought.
Is the government prepared to leave the European Convention of Human Rights?
The essay question...
No, I'm not asking about the essay question.
Well, no, because...
I'm asking about a specific, because I'll be honest, I feel like we've been getting, a bit of ankle flashing, to be honest, from the people.
Well, that's because...
But can you just tell me what's actually happening?
Well, I'm not going to tell you... I'm not going to
Is it going to be in the legislation?
I'm not going to talk about the contents of the bill because we haven't yet published it.
It sounds to me that is going to be on the table. Is that right?
I'm not going to announce what's in the bill because it's not right for me to do at the moment. We're in the final stages of drafting it. I hope you can see from what the Prime Minister said, what I've said today, there has been months of careful thought on this by myself, by the former Home Secretary. But what the bill has to do...
Is the government prepared to leave the European Convention?
We have said that we'll do whatever it takes. And the litmus test by which everyone must judge the treaty and the bill is, can these two things, when passed through Parliament, ensure that flights can get off to Rwanda by the spring? That is our objective. The bill must do that. I'm confident that we can put those arrangements in place. And that's what we'll be judged upon.
I don't understand how, let me put it a slightly different way, you can sit here and say, yes, flights will take off to Rwanda if you don't include leaving the European Convention on Human Rights in this legislation.
Well, I think that isn't... you don't have to leave the European Convention in order to do a successful policy.
Correct.
The key thing, however, is that the bill is sufficiently comprehensive so that there are not further avenues for legal challenge, whether in our domestic courts or elsewhere. That is what we're setting out to do. We've given this a great deal of thought and know what needs to be done.
Okay.
And I hope when you see the treaty, coupled with the bill, you and more importantly, the millions of people who care about this issue will see what we're setting out to do and will have confidence in us.
We're gearing up for battles in the Commons and the Lords over this, potentially extracting ourselves from international treaties. This is going to take up months and months. It's going to use up a huge amount of political capital. Is this really where we're going?
Well, firstly, we managed to pilot by far the most robust piece of immigration legislation in my lifetime through Parliament earlier this year, relatively easily, because on our side, at least, people are united in knowing that we have to stop the boats.
I think
We've made significant progress. Numbers are down by a third, remember?
I think my point
but
here,
you have to go further. I think you are underestimating, if I may say so, the high degree of unity, certainly on the Conservative benches, about fixing this problem.